Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Puppet Masters and Castle Freaks, the internet's leading all things Charles Band podcast. If you're tuning in for the very first time, you heard me correctly. This is an all things Charles Band podcast. So you might have been thinking that none of these existed in the world. Well, no, there is at least one, and you have found it. So congratulations to you. I am one of your hosts, room service gigolo, Jared Hornbeck, and I am coming to you from Jalapeno, Mexico, otherwise known as Brooklyn, New York. But I am not driving cross country to the beaches of Mexico by myself. No, who is with me?
Well, it is I, Queen of the Go-Go Dancers, Steve Guntley. And this is the podcast about desert makeovers, surfer bros, and banana bikinis. That's because this is the podcast about Assault of the Killer Bimbos, a cult comedy that may be the inadvertent inspiration for a canonical feminist film. Not something necessarily you would expect to hear from that title, but I'm excited to dig into it. Also excited because we have a very cool guest returning to join us today. Who is here with us today, Jared?
Well, we found a movie that was in spirit to some other things we've watched in the past. We listened to your comments, we listened to your emails, and so we had to deliver for Assault of the Killer Bimbos. You know, it's a movie that's got some similarities in some way to Bad Channels. So we couldn't do anything but bring back the aficionado who joined us on Bad Channels. Becky Darke is making her return to Puppet Masters Castle Freaks. Becky, welcome back.
Thank you so much. Nice to be back, guys. Nice to see you.
You as well. We're excited to have you back. One of our faves. And I'm glad that you were able to bring us this absolutely wild movie that was not on my radar. I'd heard of the title, of course. I knew it for its reputation as kind of a staple of USA Up All Night. Now, okay, was that a program you had in the UK? Obviously, the USA Network was probably not something that translated. But did you have like a show like that like ran late at night and showed like kind of trashy movies with like a irreverent host?
Not exactly, not quite kind of in that sort of genre, I guess. But the thing that really springs to mind is oh God, what was it called? I think it was called Videodrome.
Okay.
And that was like a kind of late night like genre. You know, your kind of teenage bedroom, TV in your bedroom.
Yeah.
And they were kind of curated videos, and you stayed up far too late, like, you know, when you've got school the next day, watching stuff that you were probably far too young to be watching. So less of the kind of like bikini dances and irreverence, but still like definitely that kind of early introduction to like late night films that you probably shouldn't be watching at that age.
Absolutely. I mean, and this is such a perfect candidate for that kind of program. For us, it was USA Up All Night. Rhonda Shear or Gilbert Godfrey were the hosts. We also have like The Last Drive-In with Joe Bob Briggs, of course, which is a classic. But this is like a textbook example of the kind of movie that would excel at that, because it's a movie that airs late at night. It sounds dirty, but it's not. Like it sounds lascivious. It sounds like something forbidden that you shouldn't be watching. But then when you watch it, it's all pretty good natured and silly and harmless. I think that's kind of the sweet spot where that movie lives. If you go too far to like video nasty territory, then it's going to be off-putting for people. But this is just kind of harmless little TNA thrills.
Yeah, you nailed it when you said good-natured. I think that's what, well, I mean, I think that's what they were going for with Beach Babes from Beyond, and we covered that, and Cave Girl Island. Cave Girl Island is not good-natured, but Beach Babes from Beyond, the first one, I think they're going for it here, but to less success, shall we say, because Beach Babes from Beyond, I mean, that was essentially launching the Torchlight Pictures subdivision of Full Moon. Here, this is, something that Charles Band was shopping around the Cannes Film Festival in 1987. Again, totally. Well, you know what, Steve, before we get too much into the movie, why don't we tell our listeners a little bit about the movie, fire off some stats about the movie, and then I'll talk a little bit about this and a similarity to another movie we'll cover down the road on the show, because it's hard to talk about one without the other.
Yeah, absolutely. So Assault of the Killer Bimbos was released May 6, 1988. It's directed by Anita Rosenberg, and it's written by Ted Nicolau with a story by Anita Rosenberg and Patty Mullen. And it is, or not Patty Mullen, excuse me, Patty
Frankenhooker herself?
different, not her. That would be incredible, but no, it's Patty Astor. And this stars Elizabeth Catan, Christina Whitaker, Tamara Souza, Nick Cassavetes, Griffin O'Neill, Jamie Bozian, Mike Muscat, and of course the D's, Eddie Deason. This actually makes a really good companion piece to a movie we talked about not too long ago, Slave Girls from Beyond Infinity, for a couple of reasons. First of all, same star, Elizabeth Catan. She starred in both of those movies. Both of these movies have ridiculous sounding, controversy baiting names. And both of them are sleazy but good-natured and more subversive than I think they need to be. So, yeah, if you don't count one segment in Dungeon Master, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, Jared, but if we don't count the one segment in Dungeon Master, I believe this might signify our first film that we've covered on this show directed by a woman. And I don't know how that makes me, I don't think that makes me feel great that it's taken us this long to get to one, and that this might be one of only a handful that exist.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's not many. And I think you're right, Steve. There was the segment of the Dungeon Master, really cool segment, by the way. But this is, I want to say it's written and directed by a woman, although we mentioned that the screenwriting credit was given to Ted Nicolau. He basically went back and rewrote this. But a little history on this one particular movie, because listeners might see that we're doing this episode and that we're not lumping it with another movie that's coming up down the road, which I'll reference in a second. Basically, the story of this movie goes that Charles Band had this title, and he shopped it around Cannes Film Festival in, I believe, 1987.
Yes.
And the people who he ended up giving this title to were Gorman Bechard and Carmine Capabianco, under the helm of Generic Pictures.
Yes.
Now, they are obviously responsible for the terrific Psychos in Love, which we had an absolute blast with. Apparently, they churned something out really quickly that was not really considered to be watchable.
Okay.
For zero budget, obviously, even comparatively, for nothing, they took the name Assault of the Killer Bimbos and they made something that better mirrored the name of the movie. Because you might watch this entire movie and say, not only are they not really bimbos, they don't kill anyone in the movie.
No.
So right there, the title is kind of a lie, but the one that was made, it wasn't really a lie. It was about a bunch of high school girls who seek revenge on who they consider to be the sleazebag men of their school and surrounding areas. Charles Band did not like it. He went to Dave DeCoteau and was like, we need something quick. And Dave DeCoteau was apparently behind getting Anita Rosenberg on board to take a crack at this. And then they worked that script. And this movie was filmed again for the second time, this time being closer to and ending up being the version we saw.
Yeah.
The unreleased version, the shelved version, ended up then being released later in the same year under the name Cemetery High.
Right.
And so I was thinking, well, it would have made sense, I suppose, to do an Assault of the Killer Bimbos / Cemetery High episode. But you know what? It's like, I don't know if Cemetery High needs a ton of exploration, and we will get to it eventually. I didn't want our esteemed guests to have to do more homework. and we know it can be difficult to find some of these titles, across a continent. And so we didn't want to make it difficult for Cemetery High, which I think is a little harder to track down than Assault of the Killer Bimbos is.
But it also sounds like it turned out to be a pretty different movie than this one. Like, they may have stemmed from the same origins, but they wound up being very different in tone and very different in style. And I think a lot of that is just a result of giving this to Anita Rosenberg, who had never directed a film before. She'd written and produced one movie called Modern Girls from 1986, which has Virginia Madsen in it. Bit of a cult classic. I'd never seen it, but I know it has a positive kind of underground cult reputation. And then she got the chance to write and direct this movie. And, it doesn't sound like it was necessarily the best working environment. It doesn't sound like she necessarily got along with the producers and maybe they clashed on the vision a little bit. And she was also just untested. She hadn't really done a feature length film like this before. I think given all those limitations, I think the movie turned out pretty fun. but there were some limitations to it. She did not direct another movie after this. I checked up on her. She has a website now. She's a life coach. Looks like she's doing quite well. She's a sculptor and an artist, and seems to be doing very well, and looks maybe 25 years younger than she must be, given that she directed this movie in the late 80s. She looks fantastic. So whatever she's doing, whatever life coaching she's doing, I'd say I'm going to check that out because something seems to be working for her. But yeah.
So Becky, it's taking me every fiber of my being right now to call you the dreaded B word. But I know how you react to that word. So I'm not going to do it.
Basically, it's the most demeaning thing that you can call a woman. Let's have some respect here.
Absolutely.
I love that aspect of this too. It's almost like they react the way Marty McFly reacts when you call him chicken.
Oh yeah, they do.
They get so angry, like 0 to 60, just like furious. So I don't identify as a bimbo.
No.
I think I definitely have bimbo moments, I like a lip gloss, and
you're holding a comically sized tube of super glue right now, so that doesn't help.
Oh, you saw that?
I thought it was toothpaste, but no, it says super glue right there.
I definitely have, I think if you hear the word bimbo, what kind of springs to mind for me is somebody quite kind of ditzy. And I definitely have ditzy moments. I can be quite sort of scatterbrained and stuff. But what I really loved about the film was that these girls aren't what you would stereotypically think, when you think of bimbo. That's not what these girls are. They're smart and resourceful, and they're really lovely to each other. I really enjoyed the kind of the relationship between the three girls, and even right at the start where Lulu's going on to do her first dance and Peaches is really in her corner and kind of bigging her up, and it's all very kind of pre-Spice Girls girl power, and I was into it.
Yeah.
Well, they stopped at that roadside diner and they learned that sticking together is what good waffles do.
Exactly. I mean, no, that's kind of the secret of this movie, and I think the real juice you get by letting a woman write and direct this movie, in particular with this title, is that you can take more of a subversive angle to it. The killer bimbos is what they are being called in the movie, but it's not what they identify as. So it is them sort of appropriating this title in defiance of all these shitty men who are trying to ruin their lives. So I'm not going to say this is a great lost feminist text or anything, but this is a movie that is approaching this a little bit from a smarter perspective than it needs to. And it's got a little bit of that energy. And like you said, none of the real markers for what makes a bimbo, quote unquote, or what we think of when we hear that term are really present with these girls. This
movie reminds me in spirit in a lot of ways, not necessarily in content or in tone necessarily. Well, I guess a little bit in tone. It reminds me of one of my favorite movies, which is Amy Holden Jones's Slumber Party Massacre.
Oh yeah, nice. Sure.
Because, and I think that the thing about Slumber Party Massacre that I find similar in this movie is it is a bit subversive, and it is kind of, a woman who wrote it and a woman who directed it having some fun with the tropes of the genre. But I also think it has that mark of where even though these women are allowed to kind of tell this story the way that they want to, they still being overseen by male producers. While even though David Dakota is an openly gay male producer, I still think you get sort of that the female gaze enough to where it still satisfies that quota of an exploitation movie. Slumber Party Massacre is subversive, and it is a parody of a slasher in some ways, but it still follows the beats of a typical slasher movie, which definitely were producer notes. Make sure this does this, make sure this has this type energy. But I really like the balance of the two. I think Slumber Party Massacre and Slumber Party Massacre 2 are two movies that I genuinely really love. And I got a little sense of that watching this movie. Now, for speaking solely for myself, I 100% saw this movie either on Up All Night or Joe Bob in the early 90s. I looked it up, and this is a movie that played multiple times on Up All Night. I mean, they would do that. They would have movies that were kind of in their, I don't know if it had to do with like the rights that they were able to get or what, but they would show certain movies all the time. I know I made a reference to it in the past about Fat Guy Goes Nutsoid.
Oh yeah.
Which was a title that I always remember being in Up All Night. But I know, they would always show like bikini movies, and they would always be like Sylvia Crystal movies or Emmanuel movies. But, Slave Girls from Beyond Infinity and Sorority Babes and the Slimeball Bolorama obviously were on there too, and are spiritual cousins to this movie in title and production.
Yeah.
But this first aired as the 21st episode of Up All Night on May 27th, 1989. And now I don't know if I saw it that time or if I saw it the second or third time it aired. I definitely did. However, you know how like for the Up All Night, they would pair movies together. This first airing of Assault of the Killer Bimbos has one of the oddest pairings ever, which it's paired with a movie called Under the Rainbow, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with that movie, that train wreck of a fucking movie.
This is a movie with Chevy Chase and Carrie Fisher that's supposed to be taking place at the hotel where the actors who played the Munchkins in The Wizard of Oz were being housed. And so it is this wacky, like domestic slamming doors comedy with a bunch of little people, and you can bet that many of the jokes are at their expense.
Oh my god!
It was wildly offensive in 1980 whatever when it came out, and it's aged like sour milk. So yeah, definitely avoid Under the Rainbow if you can. Yeah, Assault of the Killer Bimbos would be one you'd watch all day long over that. All right, so I think we need to address the elephant in the room here with this movie, which is this film is very, very similar in a lot of ways to a very important movie that would come out 3 years later. This is a movie about a couple of women who get involved in a crime. They take off in a convertible across the desert, and they stick it to the shitty men wherever they go and have a showdown with the police. Yes, this movie has a lot of similarities with Thelma and Louise, which would come out in 1991, the Ridley Scott Oscar-winning, amazing film. I watch that movie like once a year. I think that movie's unbelievable. And it's kind of hard to deny that there are some similarities. Now, Charles Band addressed this in his book. He said, he pointed out, he's like, yeah, look, there are some similarities. There are some scenes that look the same. The car is the same. Some of the dialogue is the same. But he goes on the record saying, I do not believe anybody involved in Thelma and Louise ripped off our movie. I think it was a case of parallel thinking, or maybe just like osmosis. Maybe Callie Khouri, the writer of Thelma and Louise, saw the movie sometime while she was like distracted and incorporated some elements into it. But, it's there. And it's an interesting counterpoint. Like, I think you could watch these back to back, and it's like, okay, here's the prototype, and here's sort of the finished version, of
I don't
what
know
this
if I
story's gonna
agree
be.
with this, but Joe Bob famously has been on record as saying that he thinks that this is the superior movie.
It's a hot take. I'm gonna go ahead and say I think Ridley Scott's film is slightly better than
slightly
this Charles Band
superior,
production.
maybe.
Just slightly better. Maybe it's been a little bit more, culturally relevant.
He famously was not a fan of Thelma and Louise and compared it unfavorably to Assault of the Killer Bimbos. But I think Thelma and Louise is a great movie.
Yeah.
I was watching Assault of the Killer Bimbos unfold in front of me, and I'm making some notes while I'm watching so that I don't forget everything that happens when I come to talk to you guys. And I literally just looked back in my notes, and my note just says, and this is probably like the top of my second page of notes, so it was really early on, and it just says, oh, it's Thelma and Louise if they were go-go dancers.
It really is. It really is. Yeah, no,
which I've always said is one missing element from Thelma and Louise.
Not enough go-go dancing.
Yeah, not enough Carmen Miranda bikinis.
Exactly. No, I did the same thing because I started watching the movie before I started like writing any notes or doing any research. And I'm just like, wow, yeah, this is really similar to Thelma and Louise so far. I wonder if anybody's noticed that before. And then you go onto the book and you check the book and the Wikipedia page and the IMDb. And it's like, now IMDb lists that there was a potential lawsuit that Charles Band initiated against the producers of Thelma and Louise. I don't think that's true based on how magnanimous he's putting it in his book and saying that nobody thinks that that's the case. You know, I can't really see him saying that while also like issuing a lawsuit, you know, at the same
well, I
time.
don't know.
So
maybe the book is like an extreme overcorrection. Like,
could be. Yeah. Could
it's
be,
a little, you know, a little dark period he's not proud of. And he just wants to erase that from memory. So he, you know, he started telling the story that he doesn't believe it 25 years ago, and now, you know, much like a lie you tell yourself, now he just believes it.
Hey, it could be. But he also learned another future trick that he would trot out with this movie, which is casting people with famous last names and then maybe misleadingly marketing them that they are the stars of the movie. Now, he would take this to an extreme with Beach Babes from Beyond, which had an Estevez, a Swayze, a Stallone, a Travolta, just not the ones you want. This one has two examples, lesser known, but two sons of 70s Hollywood royalty. The first would be Nick Cassavetes, who is the son of John Cassavetes and Jenna Rollins. Go on to be a director in his own right. He would make The Notebook and a couple of other big movies. And then we have Griffin O'Neill. Griffin O'Neill is the son of Ryan O'Neill, famous piece of shit. You know, and he was...
Wait, who's the famous piece of shit, Ryan or Griffin?
You know what? I'm going to say Ryan, because whatever problems that Griffin was involved in seemed to stem from his really fucking horrible relationship to his father, who was a terrible human being. Rest in piss, Ryan O'Neill. But yeah,
scorching hot take, man. We've played it pretty safe on this show so far, but fuck it, we're throwing the gauntlet down now.
That's the thing. Let's see if I'm willing to bet nobody in the estate of Ryan O'Neill is going to be like, no, he's not wrong. You know, just read any article about that guy. He sucks. But Griffin O'Neill was the subject of a lot of tabloid chatter around this time. So he had been kind of throughout the 80s because he had kind of this wild party boy reputation. He was always getting in trouble with some drugs or, you know, speeding tickets, things like that. And he was also often in the news because he would get into violent physical altercations with his father. His father, you know, broke some of his teeth and, like, you know, did stuff like that. Like they had a really horrible relationship. But when he was coming to this movie, he was fresh off a really horrible, tragic incident that happened in 1986. So he was filming a movie off in Maryland, and he during some downtime, he and his friend Giancarlo Coppola, who is the son of Francis Ford Coppola, they went out onto a speedboat to just have some fun and like blow off some steam in between shots. Griffin O'Neill was driving the boat. He piloted it between two large like industrial tankers that he didn't realize were connected by a tow line. So when he drove through there, poor Giancarlo Coppola stood up at the wrong time and was decapitated by a taut steel wire. About the most horrible thing you could imagine happening when you're out on just like a little friendly joyride, you know?
Assault of the Killer Bimbos, everyone. Here we are.
Here we are. I was literally about to say that's the sort of thing that would happen in a full moon movie. Like that is insane.
It's absolutely. It's just one of the most.
Isn't that the opening scene of Sleepaway Camp?
It kind of
I mean, kind of, yeah. And I also couldn't help thinking about Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, where he's like,
exactly, Indiana Jones' Last Crusade.
Between them, I said, don't go between them.
Or like Ghost Ship, you know, think about what happened in the opening scene of Ghost Ship. It's just like, so this was horrible, you know, but he didn't have any drugs or alcohol in his system, and it was found to just be negligence with the boat. You know, it was ruled to be an accident, and Griffin O'Neill didn't face any jail time or serious charges or anything like that. He did wind up getting involved in a years-long lawsuit with the Coppola family, who were really trying to appeal that ruling and have him held responsible for the accident, because obviously they're devastated by this. You know, I think he was like 26 years old when he died. So really horrible story, and that kind of a really horrible place for him to be coming to this movie from, you know, like, because this is a very light, silly movie where he's playing a doofy surfer boy. So it's an interesting context to include in there, and just kind of a tragic
is he
figure.
The big blonde one?
No, that's Nick
the big blonde one is Nick Cassavetes.
Oh, that's Nick Cassavetes. Okay.
Who, for some reason, is this like hulking 6'6" man when his father, John Cassavetes, was like a bridge troll.
Yeah. And like, I don't know where that came from. Gina Rollins isn't like necessarily huge either, so I don't know. It just happened that way. He came out very, very tall. So that's kind of most of the context I wanted to give on this background. Like, I will say that this is one of the few Empire / Full Moon movies that Roger Ebert actually watched and gave a review to. This movie was on his radar because he used to hold a contest for like silliest film titles that he saw at Cannes. He liked to go down to the basement where Charles Band used to like to hawk all of his movies, and he would keep a list of the silliest movie titles. And he said this one was the winner the year that he went down. And he felt that the movie delivered on that promise. He actually gave it kind of a polite, if dismissive, review. It's a 2-star review where he says it's a deeply stupid movie, but he says it's charming in its own kind of like terrible way. He then proceeded to spend at least a good paragraph and a half talking about the nudity in the film, which you have to love. Roger Ebert was always horny on Maine, like every time, every one of his reviews. It doesn't even feel lascivious when he does it. He's just kind of saying like, oh, hey, by the way, if you're looking for titillation in this movie, there is a nude scene, but they seem to be cutting away from their faces when they're showing nudity because I think they're using a body double. Now, why would they do this? And so he's kind of going off on a little side tangent because he doesn't have a whole lot to say about this movie, but the
fact that there's loads of tits in it.
Exactly. And
I mean, the fact that he says anything about this movie is crazy, considering besides your heavy hitters from Empire at this time, because I mean, this movie is coming on the heels of Slave Girls from Beyond Infinity and Sorority Babes and Slimeball Bolorama, and this is like a urban classics subdivision of Empire. So they're making a real specific type of movie, but your Empire heavy hitters, your Reanimator, your From Beyond, your Ghoulies, your Troll, those type of movies, Trancers, probably those are getting reviewed by professional critics. Most of the other things in these smaller urban classics type sub-labels, they're not even like, the critics aren't even aware. They're not even on the radar. So the fact that there's a whole like segment of the At the Movies that's devoted to this movie, I love so much, because you get to watch Gene Siskel sit there and just kind of be like, this movie is basically nothing. Like, he doesn't really have anything to say. But then you get Roger Ebert, who like is kind of going out of his way to defend this type of trash cinema. And I like that it even got that much attention, because it's more attention than most of these movies were getting at the time.
Yeah, for sure.
Within a couple years, they'd be getting none.
Well, and I think Charles Band did have an inkling that this movie would be a crossover hit, and he wanted to roll this out into more theaters than they ended up doing. He wanted to give this a big push. There was like this would have been the early days of Comedy Central, before it was even called that. I think it was called like the Ha channel around this time or something like that. But he would run ads on that because this is sort of a good vehicle for that deep cable kind of network at the time. But I think ultimately they only released this in about 80 theaters because Empire was struggling and they were on the verge of kind of going bankrupt and losing the entire studio. So like many Empire films before this got a very small theatrical release where it basically made its money back. This cost $250,000, so it's a very minimally budgeted film. It didn't take much for it to make its money back. And of course, it made a killing on video and in subsequent like late night, up all night showings. So this is a movie that was like pretty successful for what it was trying to do. I'm curious, Becky, was this your first time watching this, or have you come to this movie before?
No, it was my first time. I hadn't even heard of it. So when Jared sent me the message, I was like, I'm sorry, assault of the what?
I can't even say that word. It makes me too furious.
You can't say that. That's our word. So I was completely blind to it. And hit play, had no idea what to expect, and quite like Bad Channels, the last film that we chatted about when I was on the podcast. It was a really, really pleasant surprise. Like we've already kind of hinted at it, I guess, but like the writing's really smart, and it is very silly, but it is charming and it is good natured, and there is this, like, it's got a very kind of like very tight narrative, kind of along the Thelma and Louise bent. It just it's these three girls sort of on the run from the law, trying to get to the Mexican border, and they are having various encounters along the way. And I loved the kind of like all of the stuff that they get thrown at them, whether that is from small town cops or weird like Mexican
yokels.
Rip the hick gas station attendant, and the Mexican owner of the motel that they go to, like that had me. There were proper laugh out loud moments in this, and the bit where he like comes out from the back and they have just come into the motel and he's got like a tray of drinks and like this big kind of Mexican handlebar mustache, and he notices that it's these three like beautiful women, and so he like throws these drinks on the floor and rips off 2 bits of his mustache to kind of make it less like hammy, I guess. Like there are bits like that. There's like high kicks and there's bikinis and stuff. Like there's a certain amount of sort of Russ Meyer kind of esque stuff to it, which is very, very much my jam. So I loved all that.
Well, that's how you got Ebert involved. I mean, didn't he do one of the Beyond the Valley of the Dolls?
He did, yeah. He was buddies with Russ Meyer, yeah. So you throw out a movie like this out, and Ebert's always.
It's funny because we've mentioned Sorority Babes, we've mentioned Slave Girls. We didn't mention the one movie I think this actually spiritually is most similar to, which is Cannibal Women in the Avocado Jungle of Death.
There's a bit of that, yeah. There is a bit of that too. Another similarly wildly titled movie that is smarter and more subversive than it needs to be. I think that would be a really great kind of triple feature, quadruple feature if you wanted to throw in Beach Babes from Beyond in there. Why not? We should talk about the killer bimbos themselves a little bit, because these 3 actresses, we have Elizabeth Caden, who we talked about with Slave Girls from Beyond already. We have Christina Whitaker, who did not really go on to do much after this. She was a dancer and a model. Looks like she hasn't made any films or been in anything since about 1994. So she just kind of dropped out of the business. And then Tamara Souza, the actress who plays Darlene the waitress, is actually a very successful meteorologist in the Philadelphia market. She's won 17 Emmys as a weather person, and is like doing it to this day. So like in Philadelphia, they mostly know her as just like a trusted weather reporter, which she's been doing for most of her life. So that's pretty cool that everybody kind of bounced off that. This was her one and only film. So she didn't really do much beyond that, but pretty cool that was able to happen for her. And like we mentioned with Anita Rosenberg, she's got a successful life coaching practice going on right now with endorsements from old co-stars like Virginia Madsen and things like that. So
I did not know that Emmys for Weather Girls was even a thing. It's a thing. Amazing. I love that for them.
It's a thing. There are like regional Emmys and technical Emmys and things like that, things that don't get put on TV generally. But they get acknowledged for local newscasts and things like that. So yeah,
I'm glad they're getting quite well for something. I have to say, I'm gonna come right out and say this. She's been discussed on the show before, and the more that I am exposed to stuff that she's doing, I really love Elizabeth Caton. She has such a fun energy. Like I remember her from Friday the 13th 7, and I always liked her performance in that movie. I thought she was one of the memorable kind of like dead meats in that movie.
Yeah.
And and then so when we were doing the Slave Girls from Infinity episode, from Beyond Infinity, I was like, oh yeah, it's like that's the girl from Friday the 13th 7. But then when I was looking into it more, I was like, Oh no, she like we talked about it in that episode about how she's in a kind of an early slasher movie called Silent Madness that came out during the slasher 3D boom of the 80s, which is a lot of fun. And then she's in Silent Night, Deadly Night 2, which everyone knows as gets killed by Eric Freeman, the Garbage Day guy. She was in a movie called Necromancer. She's in Twins with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito. But Friday the 13th, 7, Dr. Alien, and just a bunch of low budget stuff, a bunch of Vice Academy sequels. And I'm always fascinated by people whose career stays in this lane of being in just like really obscure things that super niche audiences gravitate towards.
Yeah.
And like, I am that audience. I am that person,
absolutely.
And it's like, I'm such a fan of her in these movies, and watching this movie, I watched it twice. I haven't seen it before on network television, but I watched it twice, once just to kind of, get the lay of the land again. And then the second time to point out certain things and take notes. But really, I feel like I'm just so captivated every time she's on screen. Like, I just love her energy from this time. And I felt like she was, one of the best things about Slave Girls from Beyond Infinity. And I feel that way about this too. I'm a fan.
Well, do you know who they originally wanted to cast in these roles? They wanted Linnea Quigley. Linnea Quigley, Brinke Stevens, and Michelle Bauer.
Well, of course. I mean, you bring the Nightmare Sisters in if you're going to do anything like this. They have to be first choice.
But for this movie, I think they would have brought the wrong energy. I like that these three, I think these three are bringing a little more sweetness, a little more innocence, and a little more guilelessness than I think those three would, because they've lived in the sleaze. They know exactly how to play it like really big and go really campy and really goofy and really own a movie called Assault of the Killer Bimbos. These three are not really playing it like they're in a movie with like a dirty title. They're not playing it like that. There are like real moments of sweetness between them. Like we said, the roadside picnic / makeover / gratuitous nudity scene seems like it's just thrown in there for male titillation, but it is also couched to us as this moment of bonding. It's the one girl feels very insecure, and in true like glorious female friendship mode, the other two immediately snapping. It's like, no, you shut your mouth. You are beautiful.
They say, no, you shut your mouth. You're beautiful, but also let's give you a makeover. There's a little bit of mixed messaging there from the girls.
There's still a little bit of that 80s thing. It's like, oh, if you want to feel good about yourself, let's make you look good to a man, because currently, ew. Yes, men would not like you.
And they lay it out pretty plainly as well. Peaches says to Lulu, like, men like it when girls have lots of makeup and lots of perfume and lots of jewelry and really tight clothes. So let's get that sorted for you. And that's exactly what they do. But you know what's really sweet is that when the big blonde surfer man, who's her love interest, turns up, he's like, no, do you know what? A girl like you, with your beauty, you don't need all that. And it gives her really something to think about.
Well, I got one of my biggest laughs of the movie in that scene when she's like, how do I look? And he's like, you look like shit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but he means it in the nicest possible way.
But it also gives us a little bit of dimension to the Peaches character too, because she is kind of like the hyper competent one. She's the one who's been around the block a few times. Like, most of her lines are punctuated with like, "Oh, trust me, I know." Like
she's a Brooklynite.
She's a Brooklynite. They know everything. They're walking here. Like, you know that.
Yeah, she might be. She might live down the block from me for all I know.
Exactly. Yeah. She's probably like stringing laundry up between buildings right now. I don't know. I haven't been to Brooklyn in a long time. I assume that still happens. But like she has that energy of like, oh, I've seen it all. I know it all. But like, she doesn't know it all. Like, she's giving bad advice right here. Like, and I think we in the audience are picking up on that. It's like, I don't know, that's not what guys want. That's not what's going to work for this. Like, they don't really care about a lot of hairspray and stuff like that. But like, so it gives a little extra dimension to her that like she's giving all this advice and she thinks she knows everything, but her perspective has been skewed maybe from being in this kind of male gazy profession for too long.
Well, and having to sleep with Broadway producers called something Smegman, like
Benny Smegman. Yes.
Benny Smegman. Could you have a clearer sleazebag name than Benny Smegman?
Nope.
And she's had to sleep with him.
Well,
for
I don't know, maybe
part.
Shifty Joe or
like
Dirty Louie.
Yeah,
I was gonna say Shifty Joe, Shifty
like,
Joe, and Dirty Louie, and like big, just great character names in this movie.
Yeah, there's such great like
So
first
good.
pass like a gangster names. Yeah,
Placeholder names.
yeah. Insert gangster later. Yeah.
Big, dirty, and shifty.
Look, it tells us
My
everything
tinfoil.
we need to know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
his original name was like Shifty Joseph, and they changed it at Ellis Island, But
yeah, it's an Ellis Island chop job.
Exactly.
They just wanted us to recognize he's down to earth. I think one of the things that I had a lot of fun with this one about is that I know between Steve, you and me and Becky, also there was some sharing of some supplemental materials, which doesn't always happen before a recording.
Yeah.
And so I want to talk a little bit about. We were mentioning that this movie was reviewed by Siskel and Ebert. This movie got a lot of press at the time that it was coming out. I mean, granted, like a small theatrical release, but it had an event that I would kill to be able to go back in time to attend, which is its drive-in opening.
Oh yeah.
In 1988, I would give a kidney maybe to be able to go back in time and attend that. But there were within the supplemental. It was so much kind of like red carpet-esque fanfare. And one of my favorite things about this movie, there's two things. Well, the first one is just the archival footage that exists, thanks in large part to director Anita Rosenberg, who apparently has made a habit of reposting videos and materials about this movie that otherwise would have been forgotten to time on her YouTube channel.
Great.
Which is amazing. So we get to see the footage, the archival footage of the 1988 casting call for this movie, which is such an amazing relic. You just get all these women coming out with their hair up as high as it could go, with like the tightest, crop top and B word. Becky, you've taken the word back. I'm not allowed to use it anymore. I will from now on say B word. But it's just so funny. Like, what does it mean to you to be this? What does it mean to you to be this? And just the answers that they were getting from people, like this thing looks like, 1988, it had the same amount of like Entertainment Weekly or Entertainment Tonight coverage as like Working Girl.
Yeah, weirdly. Yeah, it was getting a lot of circulation, and you found a great video of like the merchandise promotion.
That's my other favorite thing.
The T-shirt and the poster. I really, really want to get that button that just says "I'm a bimbo." Like, that's amazing.
I'm a killer bimbo.
Killer
like,
bimbo.
The killer bimbo. Yeah.
This is a call out now to all of your listeners. I've already looked on eBay in the UK. No. And
it's
you can
sold
get
out.
like the vinyl, and I think you can get the poster and maybe the cassette. But like, I don't even drive. I want the bumper sticker, and I want that badge. I want a badge, a big red badge with red writing that says "I'm a killer bimbo." And if anybody can hook me up with one, you'll be my friend for life.
If we find it, we will send it immediately to you. I think you've earned it more than either of us have.
Yes.
So
that it'll be a care package of, maybe a button, a bumper sticker, maybe a Baywatch style tank top. You can find the tank top. It's available. I was scouring through eBay. I'm really curious, if somebody is monitoring my IP address history and what I'm doing, they're really going to wonder what's going on. How many times I Google searched the phrase "assault of the killer bimbos" over the last couple of days. No, but it's like, what I loved so much about that is that the Video Zone would become a Full Moon thing a couple years later. But this Elizabeth Caton ad is like the proto Video Zone. It's just her, sitting on a bed. Look, it's like whatever the set of like Jesse Spano's or Kelly Kapowski's bedroom on Saved by the Bell was. And she is talking to the camera about this merch. I mean, so she's kind of like the proto Charlie Spradling in that way. And I will gladly. They've had the two right people hawking merch. I'll say that. Like, if I'm highly suggestible as it is, but if you have Charlie Spradling or Elizabeth Caton tell me that I should buy something that's Full Moon or Empire related, I'm gonna listen. I say as I hold up my Full Moon Features trading card packets in my hand right now.
Yeah.
Or my, I've got my subspecies lunchbox.
They call it at the end of the promo. They're like, this will soon be collectors. Like, these will soon be collector's items. And they were right, because there are now people like clamoring for, get me one of those buttons.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, we're those people. And I like that ad is also specifying that, like, you don't need to be a woman to be a bimbo, and like it's like a little more accessible there. So I appreciated that.
One of the main things that I took away from the movie was that actually there are way more himbos in this film than there are bimbos. Like they, like,
oh, I mean, what else are those?
Way more. They're way more bimbo than the three like titular bimbos.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean,
and even like Officer Artie or whatever his name is, who looks like a buff Jacob Elordi. He just like all of the like slow camera pans up the women, and there are a lot. But when he first comes in, there's this slow camera pan up Officer Arby, and like he's got his like cop shirt unbuttoned, like definitely like one button too low. So you can,
he's wearing a sexy Eric Estrada Halloween costume.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's like a Halloween costume, not a real uniform. He's hot.
Yeah, he's got a stripper gig on the side, and like he didn't have time to change his uniform. It's still half torn off.
DeVito in Friends.
He's a total DeVito type. Yeah, DeVito, big bimbo. Yeah, we know that.
Yes. Oh yeah. Yes. He's got actually strong bimbo energy, his DeVito.
Yeah, that Rhea Perlman, she was one lucky lady. The diner scene is amazing because it gives me one of my all-time favorite line deliveries of, "Oh no, a bimbo with a gun."
I love that. A bimbo with a gun. Just that everybody immediately snaps to calling them bimbos, like without provocation. It's just that's the term that everybody has on their lips, ready to associate with these young women.
Steve, I don't know if you know this, but if you're a woman with autonomy, you're a bimbo.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, that's good to know. That'll help.
And I almost, I contemplate a little inside baseball here. Becky, when we were doing our guest introduction, I almost contemplated having no introduction for you and just going, "Oh no, a bimbo with a gun," but then I decided not to.
Then we realized she's in the UK, and that doesn't really translate.
We have laws over here. Sorry.
Yeah, that's kind of a Texas thing. Thank you. Yeah. Leave the guns to me.
We talk a little bit about the himbos in this movie, and it's kind of a testament to the sweet nature of this movie that I think I have more patience than I do in other movies with this, because they managed to take my two least favorite character types and put them into one character. I hate surfers and I hate stoners as movie characters, and they found their way into one character, like one. They combine them for these three guys, and these three guys managed to not be total obnoxious assholes. Like there's a little stoner comedy. There's there's plenty of cowabunga. There's more cowabunga.
There's a lot of cowabunga
per meter in this movie than anywhere else.
The size of the bong that they are smoking in that car, which is like a full face bong. It's like they've got like a gas mask that then also has like a huge like weed container attached to it. It's incredible. And you get like absolutely classic shots of their car that says like, and it's all kind of like psychedelic colors, and it's got flames like painted down the side, and it says maniacs down the side of it. And then you've got shots of that kind of racing up the highway with literally just billows of smoke like coming out of the windows as they're also like gunning cans of beer while they're driving.
Oh yeah.
Insane.
Oh, it's
behavior.
So good.
Very, very irresponsible behavior from those boys.
Their van absolutely looks like it was painted by the Electric Mayhem, like while they were going across country or something. It looks like it was just kind of done like a little like quick and easy job for them as they're traveling across country to go start.
They're moving right along, all right.
They're moving right along.
The funny thing about those guys too is that this is one of those weird, not like weird movie coincidences, but not necessarily tie-in, that these same guys play 3 male friends, like sidekick characters in the movie The Wraith.
Oh,
which is a
Charlie Sheen one, right?
1986 Charlie Sheen sci-fi horror movie. Yeah, there, and it's like Nick Cassavetes again and Griffin O'Neill again together. And I think there's another guy who's not in this movie who's a third, but in that movie they're real pieces of shit. And in this one, I don't feel like they're real pieces of shit. I feel like they're likable enough as these painful character tropes could be. Because these types I'm not a fan of generally.
And like they keep coming to the rescue of the girls, but also the girls kind of completely hold on to their sort of kick-assness and their autonomy. And I loved the line so much at the end when Peaches says something like hold it there, cowboy, we saved ourselves, we'll have you know. And I was just like, yes, this is what we want from our films. Like, it's fine to have the stoner surfers turn up and kind of maybe get a cop round the neck while you get away with your waitress hostage. But at the end of the day, if you are spraying Big Vinny in the face with a can of hairspray and then like tying him up on the bed, then you have absolutely saved yourself and you deserve credit for it.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, I think we talked recently about the movie Troll, which is an Empire movie that Steve, myself, and our guest all like quite a bit. But one of the things that's disappointing in that movie is that they kind of play it as if this young boy is the protagonist and his little sister is who he's protecting, and then the troll is ultimately killed by an outside source.
Yeah.
Here, at least our killer bimbos are, like you said, the ones who are responsible for their own safety. I like that. I like that they're not dependent upon these 3 morons to, to actually come and save the day. That aspect of it, I agree with you. I think that's a really nice aspect of it, that they have agency.
Yeah,
I do want to throw out
themselves.
I do want to throw out just real quick. I was looking. Oh, sorry. I just want to throw. I was looking up the Wraith, and it is the exact 3 same guys: Jamie Bosian, Nick Cassavetes, Griffin O'Neill. It is the same 3 guys in this movie and that movie.
And how far apart are the movies?
Like 2 years.
Yeah.
Oh, how funny.
Yeah. Weird. Yeah. Weird how that would happen. I guess those 3 just play like stoner surfy bros really well together.
Well, I mean, they
stoner surfer bro chemistry, obviously.
Obviously.
Well,
yeah.
I think in the Wraith they're like a pack of bullies, if my memory serves me correctly. But I haven't seen it. Yeah. The thing that's funny about it is, like, obviously I feel like they're just guys who knew each other, like they had to have been. But I like to imagine a world where they didn't, and they just showed up for the auditions for this movie, and like, we're just like, oh, we need 3 guys for this role, or they didn't find out till the other people were cast. Like, they didn't play scenes with each other or anything when they were auditioning, and then they come onto set for the first day and they're just kind of looking at each other. They're doing like the Spider-Man meme of like pointing at each other.
Yeah.
Hey. Yeah, I'd be willing to bet at least Cassavetes and O'Neill ran in the same circles, because they're also like friends with a Coppola, like there's definitely like a sons of 70s iconoclasts, Nepo babies. Yeah, exactly. Well, do we have any final thoughts about Assault of the Killer Bimbos?
Yes, I have a final thought, a very important final thought. And sometimes we talk about atrocities on this show and missed opportunities. Never has there been more apparent that we don't get bimbo barbecue.
That is a real shame.
It doesn't exist.
Doesn't exist.
I was so excited. You're kidding me. I was going to be like, let me yacht back on so we can talk about the sequel. I was told the saga was continuing.
We were told the saga continues, but the saga unfortunately did not continue for this. And there's few things tickle me as much as the combination of the words bimbo barbecue.
Yeah.
For a potential sequel.
And then the word saga.
Yeah, no, that was going to be like the two towers of this trilogy.
Right.
You know, that was going to be where, you know, that's the empire. You know, it's going to end on a really dark note and like need to be, you know, recuperated from there.
Well, for this one, Griffin O'Neill is going to get his head cut off.
Yeah, exactly. Oh no! Oh no!
Sorry, everyone.
As they say in the Mighty Boosh, which is a UK. Do you know the Mighty Boosh? You familiar?
Oh yeah, we know it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Oh yeah,
we love it.
And they're on one of their road trips. I think it's season 1. Yeah, it is. And they it's the Hitcher episode, and Howard is insisting on telling these long stories, and No. Sorry, Vince is telling the story of him being in the jungle with Brian Ferry, and he says, "Oh no, you can't know the next bit yet. Like this is a saga." And Howard just replies to him, "What are you, Icelandic?" That's immediately what I thought when I saw it come up on screen, like this sort of grand, sort of Scandinavian, you know, epic saga. Is like, no, it's going to be Bimbo Barbecue, please. And I can't believe it doesn't exist.
Yeah,
well, they were going to fight Grendel's mother in that one, but it didn't happen.
Right.
Yeah.
we're co-opting the name here. Like, if people want to be pedantic and say you can't call something epic unless it's referring to a type of poetry, well, you can't use the word saga now unless it's about go-go girls on the run.
Exactly.
I'm sorry.
I think that's true. It's true. Sorry, Star Wars.
And speaking about Go-Go, the last thing that I want to say about the film is that I think it's very important that everybody takes away as a message from this discussion that Go-Go happens to be a highly respected classical art form. It's interpretive dance in a rock and roll format. Like,
absolutely,
I think
it is.
If you learn anything from this film, it's that, you know, go-go dancing needs to be better appreciated as an art form.
Oh, absolutely. It's the way we've reappropriated burlesque. You know, it's like, it's not just stripping, it is dancing, it is performance, it is an art.
Assault of the Killer Bimbos, an epistolary tale.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Becky, for coming back here. You're one of the best in the biz. We're so excited. Where can people find your stuff? What do you have going on? Plug all your cool stuff.
Oh my God. I'm busy, guys. So I've actually just it's good. Yeah. I've actually just launched a website, which is kind of a central place that now people can find me and find out about my writing and my podcasting. So it's beckydarke.com. Very easy. And there's also a link or like a button on there that you can press to go through to my Patreon. I'm doing like fortnightly exclusive content for my patrons. So I'm doing an essay series on the horror films of 1982, which was the year I was born. And one of the greatest movies in horror film history. And so I'm like breaking that down. The first one was about Basket Case, which is an all-time favorite, but there'll be more coming out about films like The Thing and Slumber Party Massacre and Poltergeist and like so many, like ridiculous. I'm also going to be kicking off an essay series about what I'm titling horny horror. So like looking at this kind of intersection between like sex and horror and kind of eroticism, which is something that I'm really interested in. And there'll be like, those are the kind of two key things that I'm concentrating on the moment, but there's going to be stuff about like specifically like 90s horror films are good, actually, like this whole idea that the 90s is like this kind of dearth of like good horror is absolute nonsense. And so I'll be covering
I've had this conversation with people lately. I've had this conversation lately where I said, you know, maybe because it was the late 80s when I discovered and got into horror, but I always felt like I had to go backward. Like I always felt like the stuff that was being released currently, I was always underwhelmed by. And now I've gone back and I've really made it a mission over the last few months to start with 1990 again and watch and go through semi-chronologically through a lot of the horror of the early 90s, like pre-Scream, because I always, like a lot of people, had Scream as sort of the minute where things kind of like kickstarted again. But, you know, a lot of that stuff from 90 to 95 is so good. There's so much good stuff in there that I really, I didn't give credit to. And now I've been reappraising a lot of movies. So I really look forward to that because that's been the attitude that I've had lately, where I've been going back and rewatching movies that I've either forgotten about or I thought, oh, that one's fine. And then I'm like, no, this is better than I thought it was. This is better than I remember it being. And like, I'm so glad to hear you say that.
I think when people think about the 90s, like the horror genre in the 90s, your brain automatically goes to that kind of latter half of the 90s and like the post-Scream kind of teen slashers. And there's a lot of criticism about, horror being too sanitized and shiny, and it's all kids from like Dawson's Creek, populating it, and it kind of lost a lot of its edge. But like, there are so many incredible films like throughout the decade, everything from like, Blair Witch Project just about made it into the 90s, Candyman, Silence of the Lambs, Ring, like even stuff like Brain Dead, Jacob's Ladder, like incredible movies. So yeah, I will be looking at those at some point, and I might be doing that in like a kind of like audio essay type way, just to, because like not everybody's into just like reading writing, so I'm kind of looking at kind of expanding out a little bit and sort of doing it in multimedia. So yeah, you can find all of that stuff patreon.com/Bunny Darke.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to when you get to a movie that I recently watched for the first time that somehow eluded me through the first 43 years of my life, which is Mute Witness.
Yeah.
Right. Mute Witness is suddenly everywhere, like it's over my radar. Up. It's weird. Like it's coming up on Shudder. It's just about to be dropped on Shudder, and I think Arrow are doing a physical release of it as well. So I don't know if like something's happened around like the release rights or something, but all of a sudden it is like all over my socials, and yeah, like one of those ones that really does fly under the radar, and such a good film. So good. Yeah, it's very exciting. And speaking of Arrow as well, I've actually got a couple of essays coming out in like physical releases of stuff. I can't say what yet, but I've got an essay coming out in a big second sight release of a really like massive favorite, which I'm really excited about. And I've just got a commission for Arrow Video for a really fun like anthology horror as well, so you can like guess what that will be. So yeah, amazing. Basically, as I say, very busy. Watch this space, and you can follow me on socials at Bunny Darke, and obviously I'll be shouting everything from the rooftops there anyway.
Amazing. Yeah, listeners, definitely check out all of Becky's amazing writing and podcast work. I'm sure that you will really love everything that she puts out there for you. If you love what we do, jump onto Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Drop us a quick 5-star rating and maybe a brief review if you feel so inclined. If you would like to follow our show on social media, you can follow us on Instagram at puppetmasters_castlefreaks. You can follow me personally at _Giallo_Jerry or Steve at Minotaur Matador. You can also find the show on X, Blue Sky, Threads, YouTube, and any social media platform, really. If you just search the name of the show, you will find us, and please follow us, interact with us, and join our Puppet Masters Castle Freaks family. But this is not the only podcast that Steve would like to take this time to plug. So, Steve, what else have you got going on?
Well, I'm also the host of a show called Cinema Arcade. That's cinema and arcade mashed together. We watch movies and then play the video games based off of those movies, which has been a really fun, exciting time for us. We just finished episodes on things as disparate and weird as the Da Vinci Code, The Last Starfighter, and we've got one coming up on Scott Pilgrim versus the World that I'm very excited to get into. Going to be a ton of fun. So definitely check that out wherever you get your podcasts, and be sure to come back next week to check us out. We've got maybe a little bonus episode for you coming out this week. I'm just going to tease that here and just keep an eye on this space. We might have another little bonus interview for you. But our next full episode is going to be about the movie Corona Zombies from 2020, the beginning of the very reactionary modern pandemic era of Full Moon, a film that
we had to get here eventually.
Charles Band cut this together from unused footage from other movies and then released it as a film with some wraparound footage of people in their apartments, which is a pretty fun way to approach filmmaking in the pandemic. I believe this was the first film made and released within a month of the shutdown, which was pretty remarkable. So I'm excited.
It's remarkable considering for the first month of the shutdown, I don't even know if I was able to take a shower.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
I don't know. Like, I don't know.
Depression napping all day, like just shoving crackers into my mouth and crying out the window. Yeah.
So some people start make sourdough starters. Charles Band makes movies. So hey, go do your thing.
Yeah,
King.
if you thought that if it's finally taken you 4 years to forget the specter of the COVID-19 pandemic, well, luckily next week we will remind you of its heyday.
We sure will.
Join us next week for Corona Zombies. Thank you again for a very special B word, Becky Darke, joining us today. And we'll see you next time.
Cowabunga.
Thank you. I'm glad someone did it. I'm glad someone said cowabunga.